Good evening, everybody, or early morning, as it were. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena, right at the stroke of midnight. Maybe I'll turn into a pumpkin during this video. That'll be fun. This is your goldenblack.com wrap video following Purdue's 99-67 win over Michigan. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. As always, if I didn't have a house, that's where I'd be staying tonight. But alas, I do have a house. So Purdue wins 99-67 over Wobegon. That's Woebegone, Michigan. They've fallen on hard times. You know, you kind of come into these games and you think everything's lining up for somebody to beat somebody else by 30 or whatever, and it seems like hyperbole. Very rarely does it happen. This happened. Michigan's in a really tough spot right now. Purdue's obviously one of the best teams in the country, and this game played out accordingly. Obviously Michigan doesn't have Doug McDaniel. I don't think Doug McDaniel is, a 32-point difference, but at least it would have presented a little bit more of a challenge for Purdue, most likely. But this was kind of Purdue just flexing its muscles. Games like this, you have less and less to talk about because you can just say, hey, Purdue's really good, Michigan's not, and kind of leave it there because that's kind of the story. But I think this was, I am obligated to speak for a certain amount of time. I do get paid by the word, contrary to popular belief, and I do think that this was just kind of Purdue flexing its muscles, its offensive muscles more than anything. I think that Michigan was fortunate, what have you, that Purdue didn't score 120 points in this game. I think they could have. There was that stretch in the first half where, for whatever reason, Purdue couldn't really finish around the basket. They were functioning offensively well enough to where they could get the shots they wanted, get really high percentage opportunities offensively. They just they weren't as efficient in the paint as they normally are. Zach Eady's 2 for 7 in the first half, and Purdue still is up 49-25 at halftime. It's a testament to not only how good offensively Purdue is, but how deep and how complete they are. That when Zach Eady, who is the best player in college basketball by what appears to be these days a fairly wide margin, and a guy who's coming off 3 straight 30-point games, can go 2 for 7, and you can still lead a Big Ten opponent by 24 points at halftime. That means you got a lot of other assets going on here, and your guards are so much better than they were last year, both in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer's improvement, progress, so forth, and the addition of Lance Jones, that you just have so many other avenues for offense that it can literally be, and this is a cliche that people throw around too much and very rarely mean it, that it can be anybody's night on any given night. I kind of lost control of that sentence there. But, Lance Jones, keep mentioning that he wasn't recruited to Purdue for this. This is what he did at Southern Illinois, getting 24 points in games. He was recruited to Purdue to be kind of a complimentary guy, a defender, an open court element, things like that. And he has really taken Purdue to another level with those things. But on certain nights, he can be this guy too. And he was at Iowa. He's been this in all sorts of instances throughout this season. And that's just one more weapon. And, sometimes it can be a challenge to balance all of these weapons and things like that, but so far so good. I don't view Lance Jones necessarily as like the purest shooter, more of a rhythm guy, more of like a Jaden Ivey type of hot hand sort of shooter, but he's been pretty damn consistent. I know his percentage on enormous volume isn't elite, but he makes a ton of shots, and he makes a ton of big shots, and he's making all kinds of shots. He can make a play for himself. He can make a spot-up shot. It's almost been too good to be true, to be honest with you. And I say that understanding that the three-pointer is the most fickle shot in basketball. But so far so good on Lance Jones. He's just been unbelievable this season. He's playing at an all Big Ten level. It is going to be really, really difficult to fill out an all Big Ten ballot at the end of this year, deciding who to go with from Purdue. Obviously, that's a long way off. There's a lot of games to be played, but I think you got at least four guys playing at all Big Ten levels right now. One of them is a no-brainer. One of them is the no-brainer Big Ten Player of the Year. But the three guards, I think Braden Smith is in contention for first-team all Big Ten at this rate. I think Fletcher Loyer and Lance Jones are both in that conversation too for second, third-team sort of status. We'll see how the season plays out. I'm not sure they can all make it, but it's going to make for some hard decisions here in a couple weeks, couple months. That's my problem. That's Big Ten voters' problem. That's a good problem for Purdue to have for sure. I asked Painter in the press conference, something I've been meaning to ask for quite some time. I thought this was as good a time as any. Is this his most complete team? The answer is obviously, well, maybe not obviously. They've had some really good teams. They've had some really complete teams. They've had some really deep teams. But in terms of a team with so few deficiencies, so few gaps, this would be it. Now that Purdue is shooting really, really well this season, the biggest jump from last season to this season has been their shooting. There's really no consistent deficiency with this team. I think they're good enough defensively. They're not great defensively, but they're good enough defensively. I think they're elite offensively. I think they're deep. I think they have all sorts of guys who can score for you. I think they're an elite rebounding team. They're a good enough foul shooting team. They're a really physical team where you need to be physical. There are some matchup concerns defensively sometimes, but they've been there all season. How many games does it cost Purdue? That's a 0, not a closed fist. It's just a really, really great top-to-bottom basketball team Purdue has here. And you look at what these guys off the bench are doing. What an unbelievable luxury for Purdue to have. And I feel like I'm talking about things now that we're there to talk about in November, but I got to fill time here in these videos. You got three guys here, Caleb First, Mason Gillis, Ethan Morton, who have started a ton of games for really, really good, borderline elite college basketball teams. And they're all coming off the bench, and they're all contributing in a more narrow manner than they've been asked to in the past. And that's just an unbelievable luxury to have, but only made possible when those guys don't freak out and make it all about themselves. And I think you have to give those guys a ton of credit because they are what Matt Painter talks about when this team sacrifices. There are teams in college basketball Miles Coleman would be starting for right now. There just are. That Purdue just happens to not be one of them. There are basketball teams in college right now that Camden Heide would be starting for. Purdue is not one of them. Those guys' day will come. Right now, winning has to be enough, and by all accounts, by all observations I've made, winning has been enough for all of these guys. And that is a very, very, that is the highest compliment I think you can give Purdue's program and its culture. I hate using the word culture because it has been drained of all its meaning by people just throwing it around left and right. But in this case, it is applicable, it is accurate, it is appropriate. The 3 A's, if you will. That was A's, right? Accurate, appropriate, and what was the other one? Doesn't matter. So yeah, Purdue's just got an unbelievable thing going here. Michigan really never had a chance in this game. How it gets this way at Michigan is just really an eye-opener. They obviously are dealing with a worst-case scenario season. Doug McDaniel's situation right now is really affecting them. The ramifications of them somehow not being able to get Terrence Shannon and Caleb Love in school, not having enough NIL money to keep Hunter Dickinson, has left them in this really difficult spot. How in the world Michigan, of all places, can't get an elite basketball player in college into their school is absolutely beyond me. All of these big-time programs get certain concessions from admissions, and somehow, some way, Michigan had these high-end transfers lined up, couldn't get them in school, couldn't get their basketball NIL situation. I'm sure it's figured out in football, but couldn't get their basketball NIL situation to a point where Hunter Dickinson isn't going out fishing for a better deal. And it's really left them in a tough spot. This team, could be the worst team in the Big Ten. Now they're better with Doug McDaniel. They're better at home, obviously, but these guys lost at home to Indiana. They have just really, really had a rough season. And, Purdue basically made them kiss the curb tonight with the way Purdue won this game. And you're always surprised when a Big Ten game unfolds this way, because it's never supposed to be this easy. No matter how much better one team is than the other, no matter how much of an advantage one team has on its home floor. This was essentially what Michigan did to Purdue a couple of years ago, when Purdue was at the end of that stretch where they played all those games in a very short period of time, and they were just done. They went to Ann Arbor and lost by like 1,000. This was basically the equivalent of that, and that's probably no consolation for Michigan that this was essentially evening things out after this happened in their favor a few years ago, but this was bad. This was, again, a game Purdue could have scored 120 points. Had things unfolded a little bit differently, Purdue could have scored 100 points. They simply really chose not to at the very end, which I don't know what's a worse rub your face in it move, is scoring 100 points on purpose or being seen by everyone in the arena specifically saying don't score 100. Either way, it doesn't matter. That's the position Michigan was in. That's the position Purdue put itself in by being really good, and stuff like that. And just a really, really one-sided game in every way, shape, and form. Way, shape, or form. And/or. How about and/or form? It is late. I am starting to fade away here, so I'm going to try to wrap this up. This has been your goldenblack.com wrap video following Purdue's 99-67 win over Michigan. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, no matter how much those materials are being slurred. Thank you to the Premium Club Hotel for your support. As always, we appreciate it. And I am going to go get some sleep, because you obviously can tell by now that I badly, badly need it. So thank you, everybody.